All right, the moment you all have been waiting for, I am going to be ranking every single eyeshadow palette that I tried in 2024, well, with some exceptions. There are some carryover of things that I tried at the very, very end of last year that I did not put in my last year's full year ranking. And there are some things that I tried very, very recently, or things that I'm not quite done testing, but I don't want to wait any longer to film this video. It's going to take a really long time to film and edit and upload this video, so I wanted to get started now. So there might be some palettes missing from this ranking that you've seen me use, but they will go into next year's ranking. Hello and welcome if you are new here. My name is Rachel, and if you're not new here, thank you so much for coming back. I'm going to start off with the palettes at the bottom. I'm going to film for a little bit, and then I actually am DJing a Christmas party tonight. That's why I look so festive. And then you will see me come back with a whole different look to continue the ranking. Everything that's on my face in both looks that I'm wearing will be in the description box, but don't peek down there if you don't want to be spoiled, because I am also going to link the top 10 palettes down in the description box, only because I'm not going to be able to fit all the palettes in the description box. I have 91 palettes to rank. 91. I will confess that's actually less palettes than I thought there was going to be. I thought there were going to definitely be over 100, but 91 is pretty darn close. I would love to know your thoughts on these palettes as I'm going through them. Did you pick them up this year? Did you skip on them? A few disclaimers before we get started. The first thing is I'm basing this ranking really on my own preference. It's very rare nowadays that we get palettes that are just bad quality. And there are a few at the very bottom that I think aren't the greatest quality, but when it comes down to it, a lot of this is just about my personal preference for color story a lot of the time, formulas, how I do my makeup now in this moment. You could ask me 6 months from now, this could be a completely different ranking, and yeah, all of that. So it's really just based on my own thoughts and experience. So if it doesn't jive with what you've experienced, that's totally okay. Let us know in the comments. And then if I did receive the palette in PR, I am going to pop up the letters PR on the screen when I show the swatches. I don't want to be saying it every time. It's going to get really repetitive and annoying, but we can assume that it's about a 50-50 split of purchased to PR. So I was very, very lucky this year. I got a lot of things sent to me in PR. So thankful. And if you are new here to my channel, welcome. I would love if you would stick around and subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy palette rankings. I do a lot of rankings here on the channel. I talk about a lot of indie makeup, especially on the channel. So if that's something that you're interested in, you should consider sticking around. Coming in at the very bottom of the countdown, number 91, I have the Kiss and Glamlight Rock and Roll All Night and Party Everyday palette. Listen, when I saw the sneak peek of this, the packaging, the theming, the collab aspect, I was excited. I'm not a huge Kiss fan, but I am a huge music fan, a huge classic rock fan. So I was really excited to see this collab be coming out. But I'll be honest with you, I had a really, really hard time working with this palette. The mattes just aren't in my preference in terms of depth. I really love a light to deep gradient in my mattes. You're gonna hear me say that a million times. I'm just gonna throw it out there now. And these are really mid-tone to deep. And the shimmers I don't think are very good, especially for the Glamlight quality shimmers that I'm used to, the sparkly, smooth, like ultra twinkly Glamlight shimmers. I don't think that this palette has that shimmer formula, and I had a really hard time working with the mattes. I actually did a look with this palette. I had to wash it off and start again because it was coming out awful, and that rarely happens to me. I can usually make it work, but with this I couldn't, so I actually decluttered this from my collection. I'm just keeping it around for this video's sake, but I don't recommend this palette unless you're a Kiss fan. Coming in at number 90, I have the DD Signature Taste of Guava Quad. By the way, if I have codes with these brands, if you're wondering, I always list all my affiliate codes down in the description box. I'm not gonna pop them up every time. That would also get very annoying, but go ahead and check the description box. It's all the way down at the bottom. It's listed in alphabetical order by brand. So I do have a code with DD's. That's why I'm bringing it up. Anyway, so this is one of their quads they came out with at the very beginning of the year. I definitely think that their quality has improved, especially in the matte formula. I think this is good though. Like, I don't have a problem really with these mattes. The shimmers are beautiful. This is just a color story. Like, I'm never going to use just this quad on its own. And in fact, I don't know that I really love these colors anyway. I mean, I like greens, but this pink, it's not like my ultimate favorite color. It's just a color story I'm not reaching for. I would rather pass this on to someone else because it's so new that would be able to use it. I think the shimmers from DD's are very pretty though. Coming in at number 89, I have the Makeup Revolution in Emily in Paris palette. This one I got sent in PR. I was very excited about that, but color story-wise, I actually think this is beautiful. Right up my alley. If you are new here, I love neutrals. Not that you can tell by today's look. I love neutrals, and I found this year especially, I found my taste has been really when I'm not filming or testing palettes, I'm reaching for neutrals. 9 times out of 10, especially if it's during the day. At nighttime, I don't mind going a little smokier, a little more colorful, a little more fun. But during the day, like I'm reaching for neutrals. So I love palettes that have neutrals. I'm gonna get a lot of use out of them. They're just in my preference. But the quality of this palette isn't great. Now, of course, it's at a very low price point. I'm not expecting miracles from something like this, but I think you could spend a little bit more on a ColourPop palette and get much better quality. Personally, again, I don't think that like you need this unless you are an Emily in Paris fan, although the lip balm that came in this collection, I actually would point you towards that if you're an Emily in Paris fan. This was just like meh quality, both in the mattes and the metallics. Coming in at number 88, I have the Gourmand Girls Gourmandises palette. This is the least favorite palette of mine that they came out with this year. I don't really like the cover art. It looks a little clip art-ish, if I'm gonna be honest with you. And this is a pretty much a fully pastel palette. It's just not really in my preference. You're gonna see a lot of pastel palettes come kind of low in the countdown just because I also like to rank these based on standalone palettes. Although for a pastel palette, this is set up very nicely where it's not all pastels. There are some more mid-tone and deep pops, which I super appreciate. I also like that it's matte heavy. I just didn't love the color story of this. I also think this Bonbon shade is very flaky, very textured. Again, not in my preference. I don't think it's a bad palette, but it's just not something that I'm really reaching for all the time. Coming in at number 87, I have the Sweet Aesthetics palette from DD Signature. This is an all matte palette, and I don't know what it is about these tones. I don't really love the tones in this. It is rainbow-esque, but it almost has like, especially the bottom row has almost like a dusty undertone to it. And the pops of neon are fun, but again, color story-wise, not a palette that I'm gonna be reaching for very often. I do wanna keep it around. I do think the quality of these mattes is improved from like the Taste of Guava Quad, and I can see a purpose for this in my collection, but compared to everything else coming up, it's not really catching my eye. And next up at number 86, I have the By Us Cosmetics Garden Busters palette. This is the sister brand of Oden's Eye. It's not the same brand, but it's owned by the same owners of Oden's Eye. So this is a really bright and colorful outside as well as inside. I'm not a fan of this packaging. It is quite bulky, and I don't really love the art style. It's just not for me personally. I will say the shimmers in this palette are phenomenal. I think the shimmers are so beautiful, super smooth, super sparkly, very wet to the touch, easy to blend out. I use my finger for shimmers with the finger, super nice. They don't look chunky on the lid. They have dimension. I feel like the mattes in this are a little harder to work with. They're actually almost too pigmented in my opinion, where they're hard to layer. Like I can't layer them on top of each other. They are a little hard to blend out, but this is the brand's first palette. I feel they're probably going to improve as they go on. Every brand has to start somewhere, and I think for a starting point, this was fine. I don't love this color story. It is a little bright and colorful for me personally, but I was able to create cohesive looks with this on its own, which I appreciate. Coming in at number 85, I have the Oden's Eye and Judy Spring Dragon palette. I love the cover art of all of the Oden's Eye palettes. They do an amazing job. They're artists, whoever their artists are, they need a raise, in my opinion. This is another pastel palette. So kind of already what I've said about the pastel palettes. I'm not reaching for an all pastel palette. I did really enjoy using this as a companion palette with the other palettes in this collection, which I actually ranked all three of them separately because I do feel very different about them. There are some collections I ranked the palettes together because I feel similarly about them, but this one just was my least favorite. I did create looks using this to deepen up my looks with the palette, but I honestly didn't love how that dark brown looked with the pastels, but I will say the quality is good. Like it's the good Oden's Eye quality. So it's very obviously Judy because it is her collab palette, which I respect. Anytime an influencer does a collab, they're doing what their vision is. So I can't say anything bad about that, but just for my preference, not something I'm reaching for all the time. Coming in at number 84, I have the DD Signature and Makeup on Your Radar, the Plume collection. So I thought this was a really fun idea for a collection. It is a peacock themed collection, and there are 4 different 5-pan palettes in the collection. So I'm gonna pop up swatches of all of them so you can see. 3 of the palettes have mattes and shimmers. 1 of the palettes has iridescent multichromes. I think the iridescent multichrome palette is my favorite one. I find that to be very useful in my collection. Just having a small little 5-pan, I've used them as highlighters, I've used them as inner corner highlights. Very, very cool concept. The other 3 color stories, not really appealing to me personally. I also feel that the mattes were not the easiest to use in this collection. The shimmers are beautiful though. So that's just my opinion on the formula and color story. But yeah, I'm very happy for Jamie from Makeup on Your Radar. I love her Instagram page. I reference it all the time for my new makeup releases, but just this isn't the perfect collection for me, which is totally fine. By the way, if anybody's gonna ask about this top, it's actually a dance top from the brand Dance America, and I got it years ago. It's discontinued. But it's really fun, like long sleeve, little crisscross top. Sorry, I was just looking at myself in the monitor. Let's move on. Coming in at number 83, I have the Blend Bunny and Ellis palette. Now, I have absolutely no complaints really about the formula of this. I think it's the great Blend Bunny formula. The mattes are so beautiful, so pigmented. I did break the mirror, so I'm a little weary about holding this up. So I'm just gonna pop up close-ups and swatches so you can see. It is a huge rainbow palette, ginormous. It's too big for me. Too big for anything that I would need for. I love the blends palette. For me, that was big enough for what I need, but I can see who this is for. It's for someone that wants a one and done, all-encompassing rainbow palette with a beautiful column of iridescent duochromes and a really pretty like chromy silver at the bottom. Or if you are a makeup artist that does like, you know, editorial looks or performance looks or something like that, I think it works. For me, like the only thing I would really use this for is for like dance competitions, but this is way too big for me to travel with. So that's all. It's just a little too big for my preferences. Nothing wrong with the quality whatsoever. Coming in at number 82, I have this palette. I hate to put it so low. The only reason, well, okay, let me tell you. It is ColourPop and Pokemon. I love Pokemon. Loved the show as a kid, loved playing the video games as a kid. It has a special place in my heart. I love Jigglypuff. She's my favorite thing ever. I love her. And so when I saw that they were coming out with a collab, I was beyond excited. I was so much anticipating it. I think they did a really good job with the packaging on everything. I actually really liked the Super Shock shadows that came in this collection. I liked the cream blushes, but I just don't like the formulas of these larger, like not mega palettes, but the ones that are slightly smaller with the large pans from ColourPop. I just don't love the quality. I think the mattes are very hard pressed in the pan, and there are these like kind of satin shades, but they're also metallic, but they're not like shiny enough to be metallics, but they're too shiny to be satins. I don't know. I will never reach for like a dark satin blue personally. I don't know. I just don't really love how this is laid out, and I don't love the formulas. We do have some of these glitter hybrid shades. I don't mind those so much, honestly, and some of the lighter shimmers are pretty, but just formula wise, I don't love this. I love the theming, and I'm keeping it because of the packaging and the theming, honestly, but like if you're not a Pokemon fan, I don't necessarily recommend this palette, honestly. So coming in at number 81, I have the Blend Bunny and Lynn's Makeup Looks palette. They did a 3-way collaboration also with Glisten Cosmetics, and this was their eyeshadow palette, and I really like this. I really hope that they do smaller palettes like this in the future. But for me personally, this is a little jumbled. Like I would prefer if the palette's gonna be this small for it to be a little more of a cohesive color story, just in my mind. Maybe you look at this and go, that's really cohesive, Rachel, what are you talking about? And that's totally fine. But for me, I don't have too many looks that I can use this palette to create on its own. I will say the 2 shimmers are beautiful. This is like an iridescent shade. It's very smooth. It's like a pink with a like yellowish green flip. And then Slay is a like duochrome, multichrome topper. Oh, so beautiful. But yeah, quality-wise, it's great. I love that it's small. I love that the pans are magnetic. I mean, it doesn't matter to me because I don't rearrange my palettes, but I'm glad that they're offering it. And I'm very happy for Lynn's. I think she's hilarious. I love her content on Instagram. She does a great job. And this makes sense for her aesthetic and what she does with her makeup. She's very creative with her makeup. I'm not so creative with my makeup. I'm a pretty simple gal. So for me, this wasn't as cohesive and user-friendly as I like. I feel pretty much the same way about the next palette, which is number 80, and this is the Gourmand Girls Nueva Vida palette. in collaboration with Steph's Beauty Stash. Really love Steph, been watching her for a really long time. Very excited that she was able to collab with Gourmand Girls. It's exactly how I feel about this is how I feel about Lynn's. Like, it's very colorful, it's very bright. I'll use this more like a companion palette. It's very Steph, she plays with color a lot. And so this was a great vision for her, but for me, it's just a little bright and colorful and jumbled. In my opinion, I was able to create cohesive, beautiful looks with it, but there are just other palettes that I like a little bit more in this ranking. Coming in at number 79, I have the Divaroon Cosmetics Gloomy Gardens palette. Look at the packaging on this. I remember when it was first shown on Instagram, I fell in love with this packaging. I thought it was beautiful, honestly, so well done, very high quality with the raised details, the metallic details, the glossy details, the matte details. Honestly, 10 out of 10 in terms of the packaging. I think this color story is very pretty. I really like the color story. It's bright and colorful, but it's still cohesive because we have more of these groups of shades. I find it's pretty easy to put together looks. I will say some of the lighter mattes in this are not very pigmented. They're pretty sheer. So that was my main complaint with this. And the metallics, I think a lot of people will really enjoy. They remind me a lot of Bella Beauté Bar, where they're very bright, very shiny, but some of them have a little bit more texture to them than I prefer. And that's the only complaint I have with this. I think it's a really nice palette, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what they're gonna come out with in the future. Coming in at number 78, I have a palette that I tried at the very end of last year, and this is the DD Signature Jingle Bell Ruby. They have reformulated it, and they did re-release it, and they've already sold out of it. So I'm not sure if it's gonna come back again. This is a fun Christmas time holiday palette, and I think the actual like color story makes total sense with the theme. We have reds, we have greens. I really enjoy this side of the palette. I love warm tones. I really enjoy warm tones. I like this lime green. This little quad over here is like kind of one of my least favorite colors to wear, which is like a teal, a bluish green or a greenish blue. Not my favorite colors to wear, but I think the shimmers in this are so good. I think the mattes are fine. They've definitely improved their matte formula. I don't think they're bad, but you know, I just like some other things more. That's kind of it. We are seeing our first showing from Unearthly Cosmetics on the countdown. This is number 77, and it's the Charmer palette. This was their release for Valentine's Day this year. I love the packaging with this like Roman statue in the background. I'm here for it. And this is really just a color story thing as well as a depth thing. I think that these mattes are really mid-tone to deep. I wish there was like maybe one pastel or something like that. And just like in terms of color story, it's a little bright and colorful for what I like. I definitely cannot create a neutral look out of this, which is fine. But again, if I'm gonna rank some things higher that I can get neutral looks out of. Yeah, the shimmers are beautiful. I mean, this is the new Unearthly quality, which I think is top-notch. It's one of my favorite formulas out there, both mattes and shimmers. Very pigmented mattes, very eye-catching shimmers that aren't chunky. And I think that's hard to do. But it's just a color story thing, but quality, it's really good. Coming in at number 76, I have a palette, again, that I tried at the very end of last year. And this is the Gain Beauty Metaverse palette from their Persona 5 Royale collection. I love this color story. I think it's really nice. Even though there are blues in here, I like deep blues. That is something I've come to realize. These like deeper blues are really yummy, and all of the rest, except, and there's another blue here, but all of the rest of these, I can create a really pretty neutral look. And I really enjoy that. I just think the quality of this is just okay. The mattes are fine. They're a little hard pressed in the pan, and the shimmers are fine. They're pretty standard metallics. I like their palettes that they came out with after this. Those palettes, I think the quality improved, and I like the color stories as well of those. But yeah, color story wise, I like this. I don't love the formula. It's just a little blah for me. Coming in at number 75, I have the Smashbox Always On Mood Board palettes. This was kind of a shock to me. I didn't expect Smashbox to come out with eyeshadow palettes, and I was very excited when they showed them, and they actually ended up sending 2 of them to me in PR. I was honestly going to buy them anyway. Now, I will say I actually decluttered this purple one. I got sent, the purple one is called Bougie Vibes. I think the shimmers are pretty crumbly. They're fine. They're just like, they're very 2017 to me. And the mattes are good. they're good. They're like more silky, a little more buildable. I just don't love how this one is laid out for my preference. These are the only 3 mattes, and they're pretty similar in depth, and all of these are shimmers and satins. I just would have liked maybe these 2 to be mattes. That would have been really nice. So just like layout wise, it wasn't my favorite, but I do like this one, Earthy Vibes, a lot more. There are 5 mattes, all varying in depth as well as tone, and then there are 3 shimmers. This one's a little more satin. It's like a lime green, which is fun, and then these 2 very different shimmers. So yeah, I think quality-wise it's fine. I think for the price that they're charging, I would like to see them reformulate their eyeshadows, step it up a little bit, as well as the packaging. The packaging is pretty cheap. It's plastic, but like, I don't think these are bad palettes, if that makes sense. But I'd like everything else going forward a little more. Coming in at number 74, I have the Glamlite Fresh Prince palette. Again, when I saw this sneak peeked on Instagram, I was very excited. I religiously watched Fresh Prince of Bel-Air growing up. I used to love the show, and so when I saw they were releasing this, I was very interested. The packaging is really fun. His hat as well as the stripes on his shirt are velvet touch, and this is a condensed neon palette. It gives the Rick and Morty palette, but in a very small form. And I think that the quality of the Rick and Morty mattes are better than this. These mattes were a little harder to work with. Again, they're just very, very pigmented. I find maybe with neons or like bright colors, sometimes they're just ultra pigmented, either ultra pigmented or not pigmented enough, you know? So they were not easy to build on top of each other, but if I started from dark to light, it worked out fine. It's just a little finicky. The shimmers in this are really pretty, like the good Glamlite shimmer formula that I personally love. So if you're looking for like a condensed neon palette, I would recommend this one. I liked it. Coming in at number 73, I have the DD Signature Blooming Basket palette. I was not expecting to enjoy this one as much as I did because it is so bright and colorful, but I was really able to create some beautiful looks with this palette. The mattes are good. They are that updated formula. I don't know how updated they are because I feel like the newest palette from them, the mattes are even better than this. But I still think they're good, and the shimmers are really what shine. I feel like they're so beautiful, smooth, sparkly, multi-dimensional. This is like a bright, colorful palette. Even though it looks jumbled, I actually didn't find it hard to create looks with this at all. So I was pleasantly surprised. Coming in at number 72, I have the Gourmand Girls Talavera palette. Love the theming. It's for Dia de los Muertos, which Christina is doing an homage to her Mexican heritage, which I love. I think it's fun and different for a spooky season palette. This is the largest palette that they've done to date. I think the mattes are great. They're very pigmented, but I didn't have a hard time working with them. I love the mix of tones, and this is another palette that, like, even though it is quite jumbled with a million colors, I still was able to create very cohesive looks. For whatever reason, I can look at this and go, yeah, okay, I can totally see the looks I can create with this. I'm not a big fan of these shimmers that are like marbled or whatever. They're very, very chunky and they kind of crumble apart and they're very almost squishy. I really like this multi-chrome here. It's a red. It kind of reminds me of the shade that's on my lid, and these 2 more like standard shimmers are really, really pretty. So yeah, I love how matte heavy their palettes are for sure. Coming in at number 71, I have the Fantasy Cosmetica Wizard palette. Absolutely beautiful palette, and I think if you enjoy blues, this would be a great palette for you. It is mostly blue, and we have 2 kind of unexpected pops of this butter yellow. I think it's a very interesting color combination that I personally wouldn't have thought of. Fantasy Cosmetica quality is phenomenal. Their mattes are very pigmented, yet easy to use, and their shimmers are just very eye-catching, very in-your-face, very shiny. This shade called Graviturgy is a holographic shade, and it is absolutely beautiful. Great quality. It's just blue is my least favorite color to wear. You know, if you've been here before, you know that. I've said that 1,000 times this year. If we all had a nickel for every time I said that this year, we would all be able to retire. Am I right? Everybody has a color that they gravitate towards the least, or I think, or maybe a lot of people do. Maybe some people don't, but if I did want to do a blue look, I would grab for this because I think it's beautiful. And then following up with that, I'm going to rank the Cradled in Ice palette from Fantasy Cosmetica in the 70th spot. It is half blue, half mauves. And the reason I'm doing that is because I really enjoy the mauve side of this palette. I will be able to create looks from this that I really enjoy, that are a little more in my comfort zone. And everything I've said about the blues applies here. They're great quality. They're really stunning, but just blue is not my favorite color to wear. Stunning quality. I love this size of palette from them, and I hope they continue to do more palettes in this size, but it's a great quality palette, especially if you like blues. Coming in at number 69, we have our first palette from Nomad Cosmetics, and this is the Keys Beachy and Peachy palette. Listen, I think this is fun. I live in Florida, so when I saw they were doing a Florida themed palette, I was down for it, and I'm a beach girl. I love the beach, so this was very fun. It's very fun for me. It is a very bright and colorful palette, and I think the quality of this is very good. They're really good Nomad quality. The mattes are really easy to use. They're pigmented, but not overly pigmented. The shimmers are that really pretty standard shimmer. There's no multi-chromes or shifty shades in here, but what you see is what you get, which I appreciate. And again, it's very heavily blue. It might not seem it at first glance, but it's very blue. And apart from this dark blue, it's very light to mid-tone in the mattes. So yeah, depth-wise, not my favorite. Color story-wise, not my favorite. Quality, very good. Coming in at number 68, I have the Odin's Eye and Annette Mighty Monster palette. Once again, love the cover art. I think it's very fun. And then on the inside, we have this gorgeous color story. I am able to create a neutral look. I am able to create a colorful look. Really enjoyed the looks I created out of this. It's the good Odin's Eye quality. Don't have much to say. I just didn't feel like this was everything I wanted in a palette. Of course, again, it's not my palette. I didn't create it, but I like it. I kind of feel middle of the road about it. I'm not obsessed. I don't hate it. I like it. It's good. Coming in at number 67, I have the ColourPop Welcome Foolish Mortals palette. I did talk about this in my most recent palette ranking that I bought this last year and I just tried it this year. I had it in my drawer of shame and I finally pulled out and used it. I will say a big part of this is nostalgia. I love the Haunted Mansion ride at Disney World. It was always my favorite thing growing up. I used to watch as a kid this like Disney sing-along thing with the Haunted Mansion. And I used to rewind it and watch it over and over again. It was very nostalgic to me. And I think this color story is pretty. It's very cool tone, which isn't like my first preference, but I did like the looks I created out of this. I do find that the mattes in this are a little bit powdery. They tend to have a hard time sticking to my eyes sometimes. I have to work a little harder. And the shimmers are pretty. There are several different shimmer formulas in here, which is what ColourPop has been doing lately. The glitter hybrid shades, the kind of more stepped up shimmers, and then the kind of just standard shimmers that aren't overly special. I like how this is laid out. Again, it's kind of in the middle of the road because I like it. If it wasn't the Haunted Mansion, this would have been way lower though. Coming in at number 66, I have the Wicked Widow Beauty The Crow palette. This palette is great. I don't have an attachment to the IP. I actually never watched the movie until this collab came out and it inspired me to watch the movie. So I know so many of you, and I have a broken shadow, so I'm gonna have a hard time. And it got everywhere. Yeah, one of the shades came broken. The shimmers in this are, if you like very sparkly, very shiny shimmers, you would really enjoy this. And I think the mattes are good in this too. And there's a lot of gray mattes, so for me, like, not my favorite tone, like I already said about the ColourPop one. Cool tones, especially like gray cool tones, not my favorite. I like them. Like, they're definitely not my least favorite, but there are just other color stories I prefer over this, but quality-wise, it's very, very good. And if you like The Crow, which I know so many of you do, I know when they showed this collab, people were losing their mind over it, but I think it's a beautiful palette. I can't deny it, it's a beautiful palette. All right, so I'm gonna head out to my Christmas party and I will see you tomorrow, which will be just a moment for you to continue on with number 65. So I'll see you in just a second. Let's continue, shall we? I am going to start with number 65. This is a palette I used at the very end of last year, and this is the Gourmand Girls Silent Night palette. This was their holiday release for last year. They did come out with a holiday palette for this year. I'm not including it in this ranking because I've only used it once and I obviously haven't had time to fully test it yet. But I will say already off the bat, I do prefer this one just because I'm a neutral lover. There's a whole lot of neutrals in here. Every time I start filming, my cats decide to dig in their litter box. Every time. Anyway, so I like this palette a lot. I think the formulas are great. All of the mattes are more on that silky buildable side, kind of that older Gourmand Girls formula. All of the shimmers are really pretty, really smooth, really sparkly. This shade here called Peace is one of my favorite shimmers in my collection. It's very unique. It's like a cool toned taupey silver that has like It's so hard to explain, but it's so pretty. It's not like your typical silver. Really enjoy this one. And it's not full of blues, although it looks like it might be based on the packaging. Really enjoy this one a lot. Coming in number 64, I have another holiday palette, but one from this year. And this is the Rosy Jingle palette from Oden's Eye. Really enjoyed this palette a lot. I think it's really fun and different for a color story for the holidays. It is more for bright, fun, you know, Santa's Workshop, Land of Misfit Toys, that type of color story, and I think it's fun. I know a lot of people see this and think this isn't holiday to me, which I think is good because you can actually use this in the spring and the summer. I mean, at least I feel like I can. The only reason I don't love this palette is the darkest shade in the palette is a satin or like a cream to powder. I don't know what this is. I think it's a satin because it has a metallic look to it, and I just like to have a couple of deep mattes in my palettes. I've already said that now, but I really would love to use this as a companion palette, and I loved pairing this with the other Oden's Eye holiday palette that came out this year. That one you're gonna see way higher up in the top of the countdown because I really enjoy that one a lot, but I still like this one as well. Coming in number 63, I have the Urban Decay Naked palette. This I've never owned previous to this year. I did get this one sent to PR. I was very excited to get Urban Decay PR. Really cool moment for me. And it is really 2015, 2014, whenever this came out. I mean, this isn't a revolutionary color story by any stretch of the imagination, but I actually got a lot of use out of this. I actually really enjoyed it. And something else I'm coming to realize, something preference-wise for me is, I don't mind when shimmers that are neutral are more on the subdued side. If I have colorful shimmers, I want them to be special. I want them to be bright. I want them to be shiny. But, you know, the formula in this is not, it's not up to par with what's coming out nowadays. But because it's neutrals, I actually quite like the softness of these metallics. And the mattes are good, like easy, blendable, standard, kind of mainstream mattes. I definitely wish this was more matte heavy because there's not a lot of mattes in this, and I just prefer a matte heavy palette or at least a 50-50 split. But I got some really pretty looks out of this. I really enjoyed it. I don't really have complaints. There are just things that I enjoy more. Coming in at number 62, I have the Bella Beauté Bar Dead Roses palette. This was their Valentine's Day palette for this past year, and I really like it. Bella Beauté Bar has one of my favorite matte formulas. I think the mattes that they come out with are just perfection, like super blendable, silky, but also very pigmented. They have a really, really nice matte formula. Their shimmer formula, I'll be honest with you, is not my favorite. A lot of the shimmers that they come out with are very chunky, very squishy, very textured. Not my favorite, but there are some more smooth ones as well. I really enjoy this palette a lot. I got some beautiful looks out of it. And I'm also coming to realize I don't love a palette with a ton of like bright pinks and reds. They just all kind of end up blending together and looking the same on my eyes. That's at least on my experience or whatever. I don't mind if there are like one or two of those shades, but a lot of the mattes kind of look the same on the eyes. But I will say the looks that I got out of this, oh man, they were so gorgeous. All right, coming in at number 61, I have the Simply Posh Cosmetics Aurora Lights palette. Love this. Really love this palette. I think it's absolutely stunning. The quality of Simply Posh, this is the first time I mentioned them in the video, right? Yeah. The quality is very good. The mattes are very easy to work with, very blendable, very just like effortless and not super powdery. The shimmers in their palettes are all duochromes. They create a really pretty sparkle to the eye, very smooth, really gorgeous. And I love how they lay out their palettes in a column form, so you can stick to the columns to create monochromatic looks, but of course you can mix and match. They have great color stories, they have great quality. Honestly, I have really enjoyed playing with this palette. You know, I just enjoy other color stories more. I'm not like the biggest fan of bright blues and stuff like that, like I've already said. I know I'm sounding repetitive, but I will say this shimmer Light Snow, this like olive green, I created a look using this and it was absolutely the star of the show. So beautiful. I really love their formulas. I really, really enjoy the brand. Coming in at number 60, I have the Natasha Denona My Mini Dream palette. I love Natasha Denona minis. I really do. I fully enjoy them. I find them to be super useful for travel. I do really love traveling with 1, 2, 3 of these, mixing and matching, using them as companion palettes or just using them on their own. I do feel like she does a great job laying out her mini palettes in a way that makes total sense to me. And I'm able to create a cohesive look with just this palette. I really love the mattes that are in this. I think they're really good, light, medium, deep, and depth. Perfect. The shimmers in this are okay. I don't think they're my favorite shimmers she's ever done, but they're just really pretty standard shimmers, a little more on the thin side, which I appreciate. Yeah, I enjoy this. It's just not like wowing me. It's not blowing my socks off. It is just like a 5-pan mini neutral palette, which for me in my life is great and useful, but there are other things that just excite me a little more. Coming in at number 59, I have the What's Up Beauty Dragon Eye palette. The packaging on this is so beautiful. I don't know if you can tell, the dragon is raised and glossy and just beautiful detail on this packaging. And I love What's Up Beauty's packaging size. It's always very compact and slim, really nice. And then on the inside, we have this typical color story for What's Up Beauty. They've done 3 eyeshadow palettes now, and this is a great brand if you like neutral mattes with pops of color in your shimmers. If that's how you do your makeup, I think you would enjoy this brand because that's really what all of these color stories are. Now, me personally, I love that type of color story, neutral mattes and pops of color on the shimmers. The shimmers from What's Up Beauty are very sparkly, very shiny. They have a real nice smoothness to them. I do believe that they're claiming these are multi-chromes, and I think that they're pretty. I don't think they're the strongest shifting shades ever, but if you like more of a subtle shift in your shades, then I think you would like these. Yeah, it's really pretty, but again, there are just some other things that excite me more, but really great quality palette, fully enjoy it. Coming in at number 58, I have the Bella Beauté Bar Secret Garden palette. This is one of their larger palettes. Great packaging, really nice, love the theming. And so for this color story, I enjoy this. A lot of people put this in their very top of their ranking, which I can totally understand why. I've already told you about the quality. The mattes are incredible. A lot of these shimmers, though, are just a little on that waxy, like squishy side, if you know what I mean. I don't know. Some of them aren't, though. Like this one up here is a really pretty smooth neutral. I love this top row, actually. Really great for making neutral looks. And I appreciate when I can create a neutral look out of a palette. I kind of already talked about pinks. Like I did create a look with this. All of the pinks pretty much looked the same on my eyes. I really enjoy wearing greens, although a lot of these greens are more blue leaning greens, which just not my favorite. Like I love these like more olivey greens over here. But yeah, quality wise, it's fantastic. I really don't have anything to say besides some of those shimmers that I said not in my preference. But yeah, I think this color story is pretty. It's just not my ultimate favorite in terms of undertones, in terms of selection of variety, if that makes sense. I think I thought I was gonna get something a little different than I got, but yeah, I like the palette though. It's great quality, and if you like the color story, I would recommend it. Coming in at number 57, I have the Beauty Bay Botanical palette. This color story to me is so beautiful. I don't know what it is about this color story. It's just like scratching an itch in my brain. I don't know. It's like so satisfying to me. It's so gorgeous to look at. And I really enjoy Beauty Bay. I got 2 of their palettes this year. The other one is coming up way further at the front of the countdown because I do feel like the mattes in this, a lot of the lighter mattes especially, are pretty sheer. Like this pistachio green, I had a really hard time having it show up on me. And I'm of a light skin tone, so I don't know if you're any deeper than me, if this would work out for you. The mattes are just too sheer, especially the lighter mattes. The shimmers are beautiful. Like I really like the Beauty Bay shimmer formula. Very thin, very smooth, has that twinkle, nothing crazy special. I think there is 1 or 2 duochromes in here, but that's perfect for me. That's what I like in my palettes. Color story wise, great. Just some of the lighter mattes, they need more pigment. Coming in at number 56, I have this quad from Surratt Beauty. It is the Beyond Beige quad. Now, a lot of you are gonna think I'm crazy putting this here. You would think that maybe it should be at the bottom, but I actually really enjoy this quad. Now, I will tell you right now, I got this in PR, and I am putting this lower. I mean, it's in the bottom half of the countdown for a reason. It's very expensive. And I personally would not spend whatever, I can't even remember. I think this is over $100. Now for me, I don't buy luxury makeup, but I will say now that I have it in my possession, I think it is beautiful. I really enjoy the looks that I got out of this. This is a very luxury type of shadow. And I know people say like, oh, luxury, it's like they're putting a luxury name on this and giving you dusty shadows makes it okay. I don't think you understand until you actually use it, because I don't feel like this is dusty. The feeling of the shadows, they feel different than cheap shadows. The mattes feel very, very buttery, like extremely buttery, and they don't build up a lot. They're more for a sheer wash of color. And I know there's a lot of people out there that like that type of look. They don't want what I'm wearing on my eyes. Also, the shimmers in this are very soft. And again, I think if you have more mature eyelids or you don't want a super metallic eye look, it's beautiful. Like, it's a very soft and beautiful, sophisticated, understated look. It's even more sophisticated than a Natasha Denona. Now, again, it's $100. Like, is it worth $100? To me, it's not. To you, you have to make that own decision. But I do see the difference with this luxury type of shadow. I do. I really do. I didn't really understand it till I tried it. So yeah, that's why it's coming in here. I really love the looks I got out of this. I thought they were beautiful and very different. And this is a very unique palette in my collection of, almost 300 palettes. Coming in at number 55, I have the Simply Posh Coastal palette. Love the packaging on this. It's giving beach. And right now I'm pretty cold. Listen, I live in Florida. Okay, it's not that cold compared to some places, but I'm cold and I'm wanting to go on a beach vacation. This color story is so beautiful. I feel like it encapsulates mermaid so well. We have the sandy tones, we have the ocean tones. I think it makes really great sense with the theme. I love this whole color story. I've already told you about the formulas from Simply Posh. I think they're great. My only gripe with this, the only thing that would make it go way higher, is I don't love the blues. And I wish that there was like one or two really dark, deep mattes. But other than that, the quality is fantastic and the color story is really beautiful. Next up, I have the Natasha Denona Golden Palette. This is number 54. Yeah, I like this palette a lot. We're kind of in the middle where it's like, I really like these palettes. They're great. There are just other things I like more. This is very one-noted. Like, you're getting one look out of this. Just be aware of that. So, I mean, that's fine. And I think I've also kind of come to realize I love neutrals, but I think gold neutrals are maybe not my most top favorite. I love a warm neutral look, but like true golds, I like, but you're getting a gold look out of this. That's kind of it. All of the shimmers, they kind of look the same. I mean, they have different effects to them. They have this more like toppery shade. We have more of that like kind of wet, sparkly look. We have standard shimmers. We have like a duochrome, like an iridescent duochrome here, which is not like the most impactful thing, but it's pretty. I do feel like her matte formula is pretty consistent. It's very good. It's very buttery. It's very easy to use. I actually feel like the mattes show up a little darker on the eyes than they do in the pan. And she's continuing to elevate her shimmer formula, putting different shimmer formulas in her palettes. And yeah, so I like this palette a lot. It's very beautiful for a neutral lover, but it is not my favorite. Coming in at number 53, I have the Wicked Widow Beauty Love Sick palette. I love this little palette. This may be my favorite palette. Well, I actually have one other palette from them I like a little bit more, but this is one of my favorite palettes they've ever come out with. I really love the Graveyard Smash palette. I think that is my favorite. But the Graveyard Smash palette comes in this same kind of small, slim packaging. I love this format. I think it's very nice for traveling. It's very, very cute. There is also a mirror as well. And I really enjoy this color story. It is so pretty for Valentine's Day. It's pretty any time of the year. It's a lot of neutrals, which I appreciate. And the shimmers are really, really pretty. This one is a little chunkier than I expect from the brand. Usually their shimmers are very smooth and the other shimmers are really smooth. This one is a little chunkier, but nevertheless, I really enjoyed this color story. I think it's a really cute little 8-pan. It's fun. It's really fun. I like it a lot. Coming in at number 52, I have the Laminatrix Cosmetics Rich Romantic Palette. I really enjoy the Laminatrix formula. I really enjoy their packaging with this faux leather detail. It's super luxurious. And this was also, I think, released around the same time as Valentine's Day. It's very pink. It's very Valentine's Day and springy. And I was able to create just like a straight up brown neutral look over here, which is great. But I will say one thing is almost all of these, yeah, I think all except this one, all of these are shifting shadows. And a lot of them shift green, and I just don't love how that looks with all of the selection of mattes that are offered personally. I wish some of these shimmers looked like they do just straight on in the pan. Like I've already said, I really just like to have a palette that has mostly standard shimmers and then maybe 1, 2, 3 special shades. But yeah, a lot of the shades shift green, which doesn't really match with a lot of the pink purple mattes in my opinion, or at least it's not the look I'm expecting to get out of it. But fantastic quality, absolutely fantastic quality. Both the mattes and the shimmers are great. Coming up here, we have a few monochromatic purple palettes all put together here. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Unearthly Cosmetics Night Terror palette. This was their release for Halloween, their mystery box for Halloween. And it is just a really pretty 9-pan monochromatic purple palette. I think it's laid out in a way that makes total sense. You're able to get different purple looks out of this. There's different undertones that are offered. You have 3 very different shimmers, one of which is like an iridescent duochrome, one of which is a more of a just straight up duochrome, and then one that is a standard shimmer. We have depth, we have light, we have everything in between. I think it's laid out really well with the great unearthly quality. The next one that I like just slightly more because there is even more variety is the Cosmic Brushes Gothic palette. So that's this one here. I love this packaging. It's super fun. And I really like how Cosmic Brushes lays out their palettes. I think they do a fantastic job. They have a great matte formula. It's very blendable. It's very easy to work with. I really enjoy their shimmer formula. It's very smooth. It's very sparkly. It's very thin. They have mostly standard shimmers, and then they have an iridescent duochrome, and then they have a multichrome. And I love how they do that. They really just put one multichrome and one iridescent shade in their palettes. And just for me, it's perfect. It's perfect. We have a berry side. We have a cool tone purple side. We have it's a matte with sparkles, but basically a matte black. Yeah, it's just fantastic. I love it. Coming in at number 49, I have the ColourPop Bare Necessities palette. Listen, I'm basic, okay? I love me a large, basic, neutral palette. And this one was a palette I got in PR. They asked me when I first got contacted by ColourPop to receive PR. First of all, I cried. I was on my honeymoon. But they told me to go on their site and pick a few things out. And this was one of the things I picked out. So this is not a new palette. Of course, it came out several years ago. And in fact, I got this palette last year, but I didn't really get a chance to use it till this year. And I was not really having the highest hopes for this because it is such an older palette. But oh my goodness, I felt myself wanting to reach for this all of the time. I do think their newer mega palettes, the shimmers are better. Like they've put in more sparkly shimmers or more impactful shimmers. The shimmers in this are just pretty standard. But again, for neutrals, I actually don't mind. I really like this for an everyday look, but you can make it more glam as well. You have more like warm tones, you have some cooler tones, and you have some true neutral tones. You have some rosy tones. I think it's a really nice large neutral palette that I found myself wanting to reach for all the time. Coming in at number 48, I have the Natasha Denona Rocha palette. So this is her holiday release one this year, and it is her monochromatic purple palette. Again, I do feel like this is laid out in a way that is great. It's light to deep in the mattes. We have some pinky, more reddish pinky tones. Then we have some true purple tones. I think it's nice. I actually like this a lot, but it's not blowing me away. Like there are some other palettes of hers that I love, like the My Dream palette. Oh, like I love that. And there's another one of her palettes that came out this year that is coming up further in the countdown that it just speaks to me a little bit more. But I think if you're looking for a monochromatic purple palette, you like Natasha Denona's quality, and this is something that you would like in your collection, I would recommend it. You know, I think it's really nice. I enjoy it. I got some great looks out of it. There's several different shimmer formulas in here. So yeah, I like it. I think it's nice. Coming in at number 47, I have the Fantasy Cosmetica and Makeup Just for Fun Enchanted Autumn palette. And actually, she also, Amanda from Makeup Just for Fun, has a jewelry brand on Etsy, and these are from her jewelry shop. I can link her shop down below. But yeah, they came out with a collaboration palette this year, and Enchanted Autumn, say less. I love the theme. I love the theme. Listen, Cozy Autumn is for me. And this color story is really pretty. It's got the great Fantasy Cosmetica formula that I love. The mattes are just really easy to work with. very pigmented. I will say some of these shimmers are a little more subdued than what I'm used to from Fantasy Cosmetica, which again, I don't mind. We have this more like really pretty smooth standard shimmer that is more like a cool toned bronze. And we have this purple Sagittarius, which again, it's a little bit drier in texture and feeling. So I think that's nice for variety. I'm not saying it in a bad way, but yeah, I really like this palette. Also, the mattes are a little more mid-tone, so just keep that in mind. I think it's a beautiful autumn palette. It's definitely her vision, which I respect. I've already said that about influencer collabs. I think this really reflects her style, which is awesome. And I had some really great looks come out of this. Coming in at number 46, I have the Blend Bunny and Donnie Darkowitz Little Miss She Never Misses palette. This is another collaboration that Blend Bunny did with a creator on Instagram, and I really enjoy this palette a lot. I think it's very pretty. It is colorful, it is rainbow-esque, but it is a little more curated down. I think the shimmers in this are very pretty, and I really love the tones in this. It's great. I enjoy it. I got really good looks out of it. I brought it to a dance competition and created a look with it, and I really loved the look. By the way, with these palettes, I would say 80% of these palettes I've done videos on, or I've done Instagram content on, so you can look on my channels, my socials, to find looks that I created. I'm just not gonna be able to pop them up in this video. It's long enough already to edit it. So if you're interested in seeing like more thoughts or looks or whatever, I would say just search my channel. I did do a dedicated video to this, but yeah, I think it's really pretty. There are just some other palettes that I enjoy more, but it's great. If you like the color story, it's great quality. Coming in at number 45, I have the Nomad Fuji 5 Lakes palette. This has got to be one of my favorite packagings of the year. Like, it is textured, it is raised, it is absolutely beautiful. Love it's just beautiful. So well done. The color story is also really beautiful. I really love the warm tones. We have the reds and the yellows. Of course, it's heavily blue, which you know how I feel about that, but really love the looks I got out of this. I really love this iridescent duochrome called Diamond Fuji. It is super pretty, a great addition to the palette. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting color story for the fall. I think it's very different. I don't really feel like I have a palette in my collection that is like this. And it's got the great Nomad quality, the good mattes, the good shimmers. It's stunning. And like, honestly, I can't deny how beautiful the packaging is. That is a draw for me. Coming in at number 44, I have the Nomad Travel palettes. So there are 3 of them. I'm putting them all together because honestly, I like them pretty much the same. Like there are ones I prefer over the other, but not so much that I'm gonna rank them separately. I think it's fine. So from least favorite to favorite, I'm actually gonna put the Oslo palette in the 3rd position of this ranking, just because it's all kind of gray-based cool tones, but I love these little palettes. I will get a lot of use out of these, and I think they're really nice. I really do. I think they're laid out in a way that makes sense, like I already said with the Natasha Denona, where it's like you can create a look just using this palette on its own, or at least I can with my preferences. Then the Canadian Rockies palette is second, which you'd be like, Rachel, you don't like blues. Yeah, but I don't know. Something about this palette, the looks I created with this, I actually thought were so stunning. So stunning. And they're like a very interesting greenish blue, which I don't really usually like, but I don't know what it is about this. I really enjoyed the looks. And then my favorite one is Abu Dhabi, which is the warm tone one. Shocking. These like sandy tones that are just like terracottas. Man, honestly, I really love the looks I got out of these. I thought they were so beautiful. And I like having small palettes. I know a lot of people don't love small palettes. I like them a lot. Like they're just fun to mix and match and travel with. They feel very sturdy. They feel good, and I liked the looks I got out of them. Coming in at number 43, I have the Amy Loves and Adept palette. Love the packaging. It's very glam. It's very, very glam. The color story is very pretty. This was Amy's version of her Perfect Cool Tone palette, which I can totally see. And the shimmers from Adept are just out of this world. Super creamy, super sparkly. If you're looking for the ultimate shimmer formula in a palette format, Adept would be a great brand for you. I love the variety of shimmers in here. They're just so, I eye-catching and beautiful. And the mattes are good. They look pretty similar in the pan, and they all look pretty mid-tone, but Adept's matte formula is not my favorite, but I will say one positive thing about them being a little more on the sheer side is you can sheer them out. So I was able to create looks just using this palette with more of like a fluffy brush and just adding one layer of this matte into the crease, and I was able to get more of like a transition shade, if you will. So yeah, stunning palette. Cool tones aren't my favorite, so that's kind of why it's coming down at this part of the countdown or the ranking. But formula-wise, beautiful. If you love cool tones, I think you should check it out. Coming in at number 42, I have the Odin's Eye Sol Manatu Moonwish palette. Yeah, I love Odin's Eye. I love their artwork, and this color story is absolutely beautiful if you are a blue-purple lover. But there are some neutrals in here, and I did create a neutral look with this, which again, love to see it. One of my shades came broken, which I'll be honest with you, when that happens, it kind of does deter me from reaching for the palette. So I will say about this palette is I really didn't reach for it very often. I don't know if it's just because of that or if it's, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but quality-wise, it's great. I got some really pretty looks out of it. So yeah, I like this palette, but there are other things that I was wanting to reach for more. Coming in at number 41, I have the Fantasy Cosmetica Harvest of Souls palette. This is their latest palette in their line, and the quality, you guys, it's so incredible. It is incredible. Really love the packaging, the artwork, and this is the biggest palette that they've done, and I think they did it in a way that is still user-friendly and not overwhelming, at least to me. They did, I mean, at least in my mind, you can see very distinct quads where you can create more monochromatic looks, or of course you can mix and match, but that kind of makes it easier for me, at least, I don't know, for the way my mind works, where I can look at this and go, okay, yeah, I can create a look right there. It's not super hard to put the looks together. There's a variety of light, mid-tone, and deep mattes, and the shimmers are just beautiful. Very, very shiny, very sparkly, absolutely stunning. I think there's a couple of multi-chromes as well. I want to say there's 2 multi-chromes, some standard shimmers, some duochromes. A really, really beautiful palette that I've fully been enjoying so much. Coming in at number 40, I have the Odin's Eye Eternal Twilight palette. This is a massive palette. It's freaking huge. So I definitely feel like this could have been condensed down somehow or even released as 2 separate palettes. I get the concept of this. I do like that there's the sun and the moon, those opposing kind of color stories. I actually really enjoyed both of these color stories, even though I'm not like a majorly cool toned lover. I really did like the looks I got out of this, but I really love this side a whole lot. And some of the shimmers in this, like the marbled shimmers here, they are a little on the chunky side, but I for some reason, these ones don't bother me as much as some other brands. I felt that when I just like really worked and again, maybe it's because I apply things with my fingers. Maybe with the brush, this wouldn't be the same thing, but I felt that when I took my finger and just really like worked it into the shadow, it didn't really end up being a problem. I do also always do my eyes first, and I do also always put down some kind of like glitter glue or shimmer primer, so that kind of helps the situation. But there is also this kind of newer formula called Guard. It is just like a really, really, really finely milled topper, really stunningly beautiful. Really like this color story, really like the looks. I just wish it was slightly smaller. Coming in at number 39, I have the Unearthly Cosmetics Spring Magic palette. Love the packaging and the theming on this. We have a hand holding like vines with flowers and skulls. I'm here for that. This is one of their larger palettes that they've been doing lately. I love these larger palettes. I think they're, again, large without being overwhelming, laid out in a way that is so user-friendly. You can stick to the rows and create monochromatic looks. And Unearthly's new quality is just, I've already said it now probably in this video and over the past year, it's my favorite formula. Like the mattes and the shimmers are just perfection in my mind. The mattes are definitely pigmented, not like super beginner friendly, but I just love it. I love that there is a matte white in the palette. I love having a matte white for my inner corner. I've been really enjoying a matte inner corner this year. My only kind of thing with this is I wish there was a really deep shade. Like this looks deep on camera, but it's not really as deep as maybe I would like. Like I would have loved a very dark shadow, but not everybody wants that in their palettes. This is spring, it is light, it is bright. So if you are someone that likes more light to mid-tone in their mattes, you would really enjoy this if you like that quality that I talked about. I mean, really beautiful. And there are some standard shimmers in here. There are some shifty shimmers. And something about Unearthly, this is another thing I've been thinking about. I did mention before that like a lot of brands, when they do shifty shimmers, they all shift very strongly green or very strongly blue. I feel like Unearthly does a great job of shifting shadows that don't shift all the same. Like they have variety to them. And they're not like shifting in ways that are like unexpected, where you're like, that is not at all what I thought I was gonna get. Does that make any sense? I've been thinking about that a lot. It's a great formula. Coming in at number 38, I have the Nomad New Zealand Stargazing Palette. Love the packaging, love the theming. Oh, so beautiful. And I think they did a great job of matching the inside with the outside. Yeah, this color story is so beautiful. And the looks I got out of it, I loved even more than what I expected. Like I remember looking at this being like, this is really pretty, but it's very cool toned. Then I created looks with it and I was like, wow, I love these looks. Ooh. There are quite a few multi-chromes in here, and the Nomad multi-chrome formula I think is really nice. It is more on the dry side, which I think is a good thing. It's really nice if you want more. You can just kind of put a light layer on to get more of a subtle shifting shade. It's good if you have hooded lids or if you suffer from creasing. I do feel like a lot of brands, multi-chromes are very emollient. And these multi-chromes are really pretty. I think these are my favorite multi-chromes that they've done in any of their palettes. They are a little stronger shifting than their standard multi-chromes. And they also have a couple of these like duochrome, toppery, like iridescent shades. My only complaint is which shade. This shade is pretty similar to my skin tone. I kind of can't use it for anything. But other than that, I think this is an absolutely beautiful, interesting color story. And I really enjoyed the looks even more on the eyes than looking at the shades in the pan. Coming in at number 37, I have the Sigma Cool Neutrals palette. Love the packaging. You guys are getting sick of me repeating the same things over and over again, but I remember seeing this packaging. I did receive this when I went to Creators and Friends in New Orleans. We had a dinner sponsored by Sigma. They brought us to the restaurant, and these were waiting at our table. And I just remember looking at it and being like, wow, that is absolutely beautiful packaging. It is based on the Brazilian agate, which the owner of Sigma is from Brazil, and she wanted to create a palette kind of inspired by the Brazilian agate, and I think she did a great job. I love this palette. I think the color story is a color story that I will reach for all the time. You can make it light and bright for daytime. You can make it dark and smoky for nighttime. The mattes in this are very pigmented. I think more pigmented than most of their other palettes. And the shimmers are absolutely beautiful. The shimmer formula is a little on the drier side, which again, kind of what I said about Nomad. It's great if you have hooded lids. It's great if you suffer from creasing, but they're still shiny. They're not like dry and dusty. Really beautiful. And I love the fact that it's not all cool tones. Personally, I like to have that variety of undertone. And I find it to be such a beautiful palette. And coming in number 36, another beautiful palette that came out from Sigma this year is the Little Mermaid palette. This palette, oh man, this is so fun for Sigma. I feel like it's stepping out of their comfort zone, out of the box for them. I think the color story is perfect for the theming, and the shimmers in this are absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I found myself reaching into this palette for the shimmers while I was using other palettes. That's how much I really enjoyed them. I definitely wish that there were more mattes, but I think that the mattes they have make sense. I like that there's a matte black because you can use that with any look to deepen it up. And we have some colorful mattes and some neutral mattes. It makes total sense to me. I really think they did a great job with this palette. Coming in at number 35, I have the Nomad Cosmetics Polar Express palette. This was their holiday palette for this year. Love the nostalgia of the Polar Express. It's very wintry themed. It's a great theme. I think it's really fun. This color story is beautiful. We're now getting to stuff where it's like, I really don't have any complaints. There were so many good palettes that came out this year, and the way that I usually structure my ranking, I do it in pieces where I sort palettes into kind of 3 categories, like the lower category, the middle category, the top category, and we already crossed into the top category a while ago. So all of these palettes are just, they're all so good, and it's really not something, there's not much of anything where I'm like, I don't like this palette for any particular reason. It's just like being very critical to try to rank them. I just want to be clear, because this is number 35, it is not saying that it's not a good palette. I love the looks I got out of this. I think it's so beautiful. Love the neutrals. I loved the neutral looks I got out of this. We do have one multi-chrome, which again, I like just having one pop of a special shade. Totally fun. I love the matte white, the shimmer silver. Very beautiful to be able to pair with any of the mattes. There is a column of blues, which not my favorite, but listen, I still really like the blue looks that I got out of this. So yeah, it's a beautiful palette. It's a beautiful palette. Number 34, we have the Glam Light and Betty Boop a Dupe palette. The whole packaging and theming, very, very cute. And this color story is very fun. It is reds and pinks, but I think this is done in a different way than what my complaint was before, where some of them all look the same. I do feel like the reds and pinks here have slightly different undertones and depths, that they're different enough on the eyes, where if it's all like bright pinks and reds, that's when I'm not really seeing the difference on the eyes. But there are different types of reds and pinks in here. We have a matte black. This matte black is very pigmented, and the shimmers in this are some of the sparkliest shimmers that I've seen Glam Light do. They're just the most beautiful shimmers. Smooth, sparkly, fun. What you see is what you get in terms of color. Phenomenal quality. Phenomenal quality. And I really love the looks I got out of this. Next up, number 33, we have the Blend Buddy Longing palette. This palette is so beautiful. I like the size of the palette. It is a little smaller for Blend Bunny, and I think it's great. I think it's great. This was a cool tone palette that Maggie, the owner of Blend Bunny, wanted to create an interesting cool tone palette that wasn't boring. I created a look with this olive green column that I was obsessed with. I loved how it looked, and the Blend Bunny matte quality is so good. It's one of my favorites. It's effortless. It's all of that. And the shimmers in this are absolutely beautiful. Really sparkly, really shiny, really smooth, stunning. Yeah, I mean, I'm just not like the biggest cool tone lover, but I will say it is a beautiful cool tone palette. If that's something you're looking for, I would fully recommend this. Listen, I'm a simple girl, okay? And coming in at number 32, I have these eyeshadow quads from Sigma. I've already told you that I really, really enjoyed the Sigma quality. I think the quality is so effortless, very user-friendly, and I love these little quads. I really felt myself reaching for these a lot. So I have Peach Pie, which is like a neutral, warm-leaning quad. Yeah, I mean, just a beautiful standard shimmer formula that is just effortless, and the mattes are great. And then Bon Bon is this one. It leans a little more like mauve purple. Not much really to say about these. They're not coming so high because they're not like the most exciting palettes, but man, I really love the looks I got out of these, and I reached for them a whole lot this year. Number 31 goes to my favorite Gourmand Girls palette that launched this year, and that is the Peach Perfect palette. I freaking love this palette. I think Christina did an amazing job with this. I love the tones in this. It is so beautiful. So beautiful. And I love that you're really able to get many different looks out of this. Peachy looks, green looks, neutral looks. She did a really good job with this. And I think the quality of this palette is the best quality that they've done. I think the mattes are that perfect pigment level. They're not overly pigmented. They're not super sheer. And the shimmers are really pretty. There's no like chunky shimmers in here. They're all really smooth and really gorgeous on the eyes. Yeah, there is even a satin shade, which I don't love satin shades, but I did create a look with this on my lid, and I thought it was really pretty. Yeah, this palette is absolutely gorgeous, a gorgeous color story, and a great formula. For number 30, I'm going to give it to the ColourPop and Beauty and the Beast palette. The packaging on all of the things in this collection was done so well. I have one of the blushes, I have one of the lip kits, and this palette, like, look at that. Look at that. So, so cute. This color story, I love. It's neutrals. We've got some pops of yellow. We got a couple of pops of blue. You're able to create several different looks. I think the quality of the shadows is good. I don't think it's the best ColourPop quality because it is the larger pans, but I do think that these are really beautiful. I like that there's none of those satin shades in here. They're all metallic, and there is one of the glitter hybrid shades, which I actually don't mind that formula. I think it looks nice on the eyes, and yeah. It's a beautiful palette. Soft, pretty, neutral. It reflects the movie and the scene that's depicted here while still being a palette that is easy to create looks with. It's not jumbled. It's not just for the theme. It's like an actual really pretty palette on its own. Coming in at number 29, I have the Unearthly Cosmetics Not Normal palette, and this is their old Not Normal. This isn't even the new formula. I think if I had the new formula, that would be way at the top because I love this palette. I love the color story. I bought this a long time ago and I only used it this year for the first time. We're not going to talk about that, okay? We don't have to talk about that. All right. This color, look at how beautiful this color story is. I love neutrals, I love purples, I love greens, and you're getting all of that in this palette. I love how matte heavy this is. My only complaint is the shimmers are fine. They're not anything spectacular, but I know with the new formula, I'm sure the shimmers are stunning. It is on my wish list to pick up the new normal at some point because I love this color story. It is so beautiful. One of my favorites from the brand, and even though it is the old formula, I still got some beautiful looks out of this, and it's still coming in very high in my ranking. Coming in at number 28, I have the Bella Beauté Bar and Deandra Nicole Ultraviolet palette. This is the highest ranked of all the monochromatic purple palettes that I have in my collection. I love Deandra Nicole. She is an Instagram creator. I will, of course, link her down below. She does amazing content, and she created a beautiful purple palette. She does love purples, and she did a great job. I think, again, it's laid out in a way that is so user-friendly, light to deep in the mattes, different undertones, and something I thought that was really cool about this, all of the shimmers, there's a lot of shimmers in this, and they all look different. It is hard to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 purple shimmers that all look very different on the eyes, but she did it. I think the quality of this is very good, and honestly, none of these shimmers are chunky, which I appreciate because that is sometimes my complaint with the brand. I found that these purple mattes were so effortless to blend, like they blended themselves. I know people say that all the time, but I remember it was very minimal blending involved and the purples just blended out beautifully. So love this palette, really love Deandra, and love this quality palette. Honestly, it's phenomenal if you love purples. Number 27, I have the Clionadh Cosmetics Paleo palette. So they came out with 3 palettes this year. I bought this one and I received Archeo in PR, but I have not used it yet. So it's not going to be in this year's countdown or this year's ranking, whatever. But this palette, I love this color story. And you're like, Rachel, there's a bunch of blues. Yes, but something about these blues, man, I don't know. And something else I've realized about myself with blues is I actually really like blue shimmers. It's blue mattes that I'm not the biggest fan of. And I created a look using the neutral mattes and then popped one of the blue shimmers on my lid. And it was, if I do say so myself, it was beautiful. Clionadh shimmer formula, you know, well, if you don't know, they're known for their shimmers. I mean, they're known for their single shadows. I went to Creators and Friends, and for the first time, I got some of their single shadows in PR, and they're beautiful. They're absolutely the most beautiful shimmers, I think, out there, and I love that I have those shimmers in a palette form. The mattes, I think, aren't my favorite. I think they're good. I like them, but they are a little on the powdery side. Like there's a lot of cake up in the pan, and I did feel like using them on my eyes, I sometimes had a hard time getting them to stick to my eyes. That's how powdery they were. I still created beautiful looks. They were workable, but just like when I'm comparing them to Blind Bunny or Unearthly, they're not quite at that level, but I hope that they continue to maybe improve their matte formula, but other people might enjoy their matte formula, I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, really, the shimmers from Clionadh steal the show. They really do, but this color story and the looks, man, they're beautiful. Coming in at number 26, I have the DD Signature Fearless Holiday Palette. This is their latest palette that they came out with. It's so interesting to see the growth from the very beginning of the year to now with DD Signature. I feel like this is This is a whole different brand. This palette that I'm holding compared to like the Taste of Guava Quad. From the packaging, to the quality, to the color story, it is just, honestly, to me, miles above what they were doing a year ago. And that, I guess that's just my opinion. But yeah, the packaging on this feels much more luxurious. It's really nice. And this color story is beautiful. It is very colorful, so that's maybe why it's not coming in very high in the countdown for me, because it is very colorful. But I was able to create a semi-neutral look with these 3 shades here. The quality is so good. Like, the mattes are good. They're still not my favorite mattes, but they're really good. And the shimmers are so beautiful. Like, very smooth, very creamy, very shiny. Yeah, I think they're doing such great things. I can't wait to see what they're gonna come out with next year. If you like this color story, I really would recommend this to you because it's very, very good. All right, coming in at number 25, I have the Cosmic Beauty Cool Trolls palette. Even though I'm not a cool tone person, this palette inspired me. It really inspired me, and I created some beautiful looks out of this palette. I just love Cosmic Beauty. They are one of my favorite brands now. I feel that they just do amazing color stories at a great price point, great formulas. I kind of already told you, like, their shimmers, they put in 1 or 2 special shimmers, and the rest are just beautiful, shiny, gorgeous shimmers. Their mattes are really good. I love that there's a lot of variety here. It's not all grays and blacks and whites. We have a row of like more neutrals. We have more of like a purpley pink row. We have some blues down here, but we have different undertones with the blues. This is my go-to smoky cool tone palette, if that's what I'm looking for. The multi-chrome in here, oh my gosh, I put it over a black base. Really beautiful palette, really beautiful palette. Number 24, we have the Glamlight Trick or Treat palette. This is a fairly new one to my collection, but I've really been enjoying the looks I've gotten out of this. I have no attachment to the IP. I don't like the movie Trick or Treat. I saw it for the first time this year. I didn't even finish it, couldn't finish it. I didn't like it. But this color show, when I first saw them like sneak peek it, I was like, yeah, I'm in. This to me is right up my alley. This small condensed palette of warm tone neutrals, light to deep in the mattes, and we have different shimmers. Now, I will be honest with you, I don't think there's a ton of variety of looks in this. Even when I've used different shadows, different shimmers, the looks don't look that different. But you're not buying a 10-pan warm neutral palette to get a ton of variety. So there's that. I think the quality of this palette is so good, both in the mattes and the metallics. The metallics are that good Glamlight formula that I just love. And the mattes are great. Love this one. Just under that, on spot number 23, I'm gonna put the Halloween 2 palette from Glamlight. Welcome to Haddonfield. I actually feel that I can get a lot of the same looks I can get in this, and then some. And it's the good quality Glamlight matte and shimmer formula. I actually loved the blue looks I got out of this as well. Something about the blue looks or the blues in this really caught my attention. The shimmers are just beautiful. I even did a very like true neutral look over here that I absolutely loved. This is a lot of neutrals, like warm tone neutrals and regular neutrals. And then there's like, you know, half blues as well. So yeah, more unexpected neutral looks that I got out of this with great quality. Really, really nice. In the 22nd spot is a palette that came out at the very end of last year that I guess I didn't include in my palette ranking last year. That is the Unearthly Cosmetics Dreamer palette. I love the cover art, by the way. Love the cover art. And we have this beautiful palette. I love these rectangle palettes from Unearthly. The quality is top notch. I've already talked about their quality. It's very beautiful. It's great. And I really like this color story. It is like cool tone neutrals and some pinky purples. Great looks I got out of this. Nothing else to say besides it's beautiful and I love it. I'm kind of running out of things to say, but yeah, I enjoy it a lot. And number 21, I'm going to give it to the Nomad Ireland Wild Atlantic Way palette. I love the packaging on this, and this holds a special place in my heart. My husband was born in Ireland. My mother-in-law is Irish. So the whole Ireland thing, it's giving me all the feels. And I do love green shadows, and I really love this palette. The quality is so good. I feel like the palettes they do in this form, like the Monteverde Cloud Forest, the Haunted Europe palette, the Ghost Town USA palette, I feel like that's their best quality. I could be just making it up in my head and speculating, but the shimmers in this are the best shimmers that they've come out with this year. They're very sparkly, very wet looking. They're just beautiful, and the mattes are great. Now, I do feel like maybe they could have thrown in a couple of different mattes because some of them do look pretty similar, but I really enjoy this. I did get a blue look out of this. I got a neutral look out of this as well. It's not all green, but man, if you love greens and you want to try Nomad, this is a palette I would definitely recommend. All right, we are in the top 20 now. What do you think is going to be here? What do you think is going to be my number one palette? You'll have to wait and see. Okay, coming in at number 20. This palette to a lot of people is probably extremely boring, but I will tell you it's one of my most used palettes already this year, and I only got it 2 months ago. And I've used it so much, and I love it. I love it. It's the Dreamy Dozen Volume 2 from Lawless. Listen, I've had very low expectations. I'd heard kind of mid reviews about Lawless's eyeshadow formula. I actually think this palette is beautiful, and I have traveled with this palette, and I've used just this palette, and I've enjoyed it when I've used it. It's a boring neutral palette, but listen, I think it's laid out perfect. The mattes go from light to deep. I can use this as an inner corner highlight. I can use this as a liner or to deepen up. And all of these shimmers are very different in undertone. Some of the shimmers are definitely more on the soft side, but some of them have a little more oomph to them, have a little more shine to them, which I actually really didn't expect. Now, is this comparable to indie quality? No, it's not. It is a very mainstream formula, but I really love it for what it is, for a travel palette, for an everyday palette, for a neutral palette. And like I've said recently, when I'm not filming or testing a palette and I'm just like doing my makeup, I'm really wanting to reach for something like this. It's just been in my preference this year for whatever reason, and I really like this palette. Honestly, I think it's really good. Coming in at number 19, this palette came out at the very end of last year, but it didn't include it in my palette ranking, and this is the Glamlite and Garfield palette. This is my favorite Glamlite palette that has launched in the past, year and change. The packaging on this, it's hard to explain, but when you see it in person, it is so vivid, it's so cartoon-like, it is so well done. He's raised, and the artwork is brilliant. It's brilliant. The color story on the inside, absolutely beautiful. Mostly warm tones, saturated tones. The shimmers are the good Glamlite shimmers with that sparkliness to them. The mattes are pigmented. I also like the addition of this like purple duochrome and this more like bluish purple, so you can pull it maybe a little more cool toned if you want to. But yeah, I mean, this is just has me written all over it. I love me some warm tones, and it's a condensed palette with great artwork and great quality. Coming in at number 18 is another palette that I tried at the very end of last year. It didn't even come out last year, I don't think. It's kind of an older palette, but this is the Fantasy Cosmetica Fighter palette. This is my favorite Fantasy Cosmetica palette. I just love it because it is the most neutral leaning, but it's not boring neutrals. We do have different tones in here, and every time I use this palette, I absolutely love how my look comes out. It's got the great quality I've already talked about with Fantasy Cosmetica, the bright shining shimmers, the pigmented blendable mattes, and this is just an interesting neutral color story that I don't have in my collection, and I love interesting neutral color stories, so I have to give it to this palette. And coming in at number 17, I have the Unearthly Cosmetics Gargoyle palette. What I said about the Cool Trolls palette from Cosmic Brushes applies to this, but I actually just like this formula more. When I want a cool tone look, when I want a smoky look, when I want something that's like deep and dark and... but also I can create just a straight up neutral look with that top row, which I so appreciate. We've got purples, we've got some greens, two of my favorite colors to wear. And I'm not gonna be a broken record, but the Unearthly quality is just top notch, and I love this style of palette from them. I hope they keep doing it. I hope they just keep doing what they're doing because they're amazing. I just shoved my finger in a brown metallic shadow. That's why my nail looks nasty and dirty. It's not because I'm nasty and dirty, I promise. Oh man, that makes me angry. Okay, coming in at number 16, I have my favorite Blend Bunny palette that launched this year, which is the Divination palette in collaboration with Robert Welsh. Love the cover art on this. Think it's so fun, and it's one of my favorite cover arts that Blend Bunny has done. I just stuck my nail in this shadow up here. I hope it doesn't fall apart. I really enjoy this color story. I reached for this palette a lot more than I thought I was going to. I brought it with me when I went to Texas for my dance competition. I used it for that. I used it when I went to visit Angie just for funsies. Like, I used this palette a lot. I love the fact that I definitely can get a neutral look out of this, and it's not a complete rainbow palette. It's much more curated in my opinion, and these shimmers are absolutely beautiful. Some of my favorite shimmers that Blend Bunny has ever done. They're very smooth, they're sparkly. I mean, this palette is absolutely beautiful. They did an incredible job. Number 15, I'm going to give it to the Nomad Chicago Speakeasy palette. This is my favorite palette that Nomad has launched this year. I love the packaging. We have a velvet touch with also some shiny details as well. And then here on the inside, this color story is one of my favorite color stories Nomad has ever done. It's neutral, but there are pops of a muted purple as well as green. And this whole entire row in the middle here are multi-chromes, which I love. I've already told you how I feel about the Nomad multi-chrome formula. I think it's really nice. I think it's very different. It adds something to my collection, and every look that I got out of this palette, I fully enjoyed. I thought that it was a beautiful, beautiful palette put together in such a beautiful way. And I think if you're a neutral lover, you would love this palette because it kind of infuses some subtle pops of color in there without being overwhelmingly colorful. And I think if you're a colorful lover, this would be a really nice neutral palette for you. Fully enjoy this one. Number 14, I'm going to give it to the Gliminatrix Cosmetics Barely Basic palette. I love this really nice packaging, and this color story is absolutely beautiful, right up my alley. We have warm tone neutrals, we have purples, we have greens, and they're like my favorite types of greens that are more like, you know, warm greens, olive greens, and then we have a cool tone neutral side, which I actually really appreciate. The only thing that I really don't love about this is I don't need 4 iridescent duochromes. And I don't love that some of these shades shift green, which I've already said before. Like this one here in the monitor looks really pretty like a rose gold, but it does shift very strongly green, which I wish it didn't. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like this palette is beautiful. I reach for it a lot, and I love the choice of mattes here. Love. And they're releasing new palettes that have an improved matte formula. I'm very interested to see what that's going to be because their matte formula is already so incredible. So I am going to pick up one of their newer palettes, but really love this palette a whole lot. Coming in at number 13, I have the Natasha Denona I Need a Warm palette. This is my favorite Natasha Denona palette that launched this year because I love warm tones, and it's a lot of warm tones, man. This whole side of the palette is very warm, and then this whole side of the palette is very just straight up neutral. So I can get a little bit of variety with looks, not a ton, but a little bit of variety with the looks. I just love this palette. Like looking at this, I'm like, yeah, it makes me happy inside. It gets the juices flowing for me. Every time I created a look, I thought it was great. I love that there's just one multi-chrome here. It is like a red to a bronze. It's really beautiful, and the great Natasha Denona quality that I personally love. I don't love that there is a cream to powder. It's not my favorite formula from the brand, but I can look past it for this color story. It's gorgeous. For the number 12 spot, I am going to put the Odin's Eye and Tina from the Fancy Face Earthwood palette. When I received this palette and I was testing this collaboration out, I have a drawer that I put my palettes in that I'm testing, and then once I'm done testing it, I move it to the drawer, like the drawer where I keep that brand. And this palette, even though I was done testing it, I kept wanting to reach for it. I kept putting it back in my testing drawer so that I could keep using it, even though I had used it so many times and I had my final thoughts on it. I just wanted to reach for this palette over and over and over again. I don't know what it is. The looks, like the purple, the green, the neutral looks, those are my favorite colors, which I've already said, and the quality is so beautiful. I found this so inspiring to use. I think they did a great job. I think they did a great job with this one. Coming in at number 11, I have the DD Signature The Ultimate Cappuccino palette. my favorite palette they launched this year. I'm addicted to caffeine. I'm working on it, okay? So if you put a coffee theme on a palette, it's automatically got points for me. And neutrals with pops of color, you know how it is, you know how it is. And I think the quality of this palette is phenomenal. I have absolutely no issues with the mattes. I have absolutely no issues with the shimmers. I love how matte heavy this is. I love that we have 3 really pretty, more neutral leaning shimmers. This Americano one is definitely very like fiery orange, which I love. I consider that a neutral personally. We have a very smooth neutral shimmer. We have this shimmer latte that is a little bit more sparkly. And then we have a duochrome called Caramel French Toast, which I think is a very unexpected shade. And I did create a look with this row. And I got so many compliments on it in the video that I wore it in. I just have really enjoyed reaching for this. It's like color story wise, one of my favorite palettes in my collection. Like I love the color story on this and I think the quality is also very good. All right, everybody, we are in the top 10, officially in the top 10. So coming in at number 10, I have the Beauty Bay Reckless Romance palette. This was another situation with a palette where I kept wanting to reach for this over and over and over again while I was testing it. When I was done testing it, I wanted to keep reaching for it. And it's funny because I keep saying I'm not a cool tone lover, but something about this palette, it really drew me in. It is heavily cool toned, especially these bottom 2 rows, but then we have pinks and reds, but they're not all neon pinks, not all bright reds. There's different undertones here, and I did feel like I could get different looks out of it. And I think also the other thing is the pinks and reds here work with more of the cool tones. So I'm not forced to use 2, 3 pink red mattes in one look if I don't want to. Like I can mix it up. The shimmers in this are very pretty, very smooth, very just shiny. They're standard shimmers. They're not shifty or anything like that. I loved the looks I got out of this, especially when I wanted to go that more cool tone smoky route. I really enjoy this. I think the mattes in this are much better than the other Beauty Bay palette I mentioned earlier. I didn't have a problem with any of the mattes in this palette. So yeah, I was so excited to try Beauty Bay for the first time this year. This was the first palette I tried from them and I was very impressed. And this palette is like $20, something crazy, very affordable. All right, coming in at number 9, I have 4 palettes. I'm ranking them together. The 4 palettes from the Avatar: The Last Airbender and Lethal Cosmetics collection. I was extremely impressed with these palettes. The formulas in these palettes are so incredible. I had tried Lethal Cosmetics in the past, a couple of palettes. I liked the formula. I thought it was good, but something about these palettes, man, they really stepped them up. We have 4 different colorways. There's a blue palette called Water. There's a green palette called Earth, which is really gorgeous. I do love me some greens. There's also an Air palette, which is a little more neutral leaning, and actually this one is my least favorite if I am gonna pick one, just because there's not a lot of depth in this one, but it is nice as a companion palette. And my favorite one is the red one called Fire. I mean, this is, again, warm tone neutrals. You're gonna see it. I can't help it. I like what I like, and just honestly, the reason these are coming in so high is the formula is just absolutely incredible. I was very impressed. Super pigmented mattes, super shiny shimmers. All of the palettes have like 1 or 2 special shades in them, and they're laid out in a beautiful way. Coming in at number 8, I have the ColourPop Precious Metals palette. This is one of their mega palettes that's full of neutrals. I'm a basic girl, okay? What can I say? I think the quality of these shadows is some of the best that ColourPop has ever done. I really like their quads. I think that's like their top, but this is very close. The mattes in this are really good. I really like the matte formula in the mega palettes. I think it's really good. Like the smaller pans, they pick up nice on the brush. They're not overly hard pressed, and the shimmers in this are very beautiful. There are different shimmer formulas in here. We have that standard shimmer, we have the little more stepped up shimmer, and then we have the glitter hybrids. But even the standard shimmers I think are creamy. They're not dry like in their big circle pans. Like sometimes those like satin shades, they're just dry as hell, and these aren't. Like they perform great. I love the different variety. You can get warm tones, you can get true neutrals, you can get cool tones. This is an all-encompassing neutral palette. That's something you're looking for. I really would recommend this because I think the quality is very good. All right, coming in at number 7, this is a palette I tried at the very end of last year, and I've talked about how I feel like this is This is my favorite color story, I think, in my collection. That's a bold statement. Should I say that? It's one of my favorite color stories I've ever seen. I think it's the most beautiful color story, and it is the Lethal Cosmetics Midnight Serenade palette. If this color story came in the Lethal Avatar formula, this would be my #1 palette without a question. Now, the actual quality of the palette, it's a good quality palette. I'm not saying it's bad quality palette by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying it's bad quality. Obviously, it's coming in at #7, for goodness sake. Like, I clearly like this palette a lot. The color story is just beautiful to me. Like light, deep, smoky purple, neutral. I don't know what it is. The whole thing, it just makes me happy. The shimmers are really beautiful. I just love it. I love it. I do think that the mattes in their newer formula are a little bit more like the Lethal Cosmetics palettes. I'm pointing behind me because I put them back in their drawer. They're a little more pigmented. These ones are a little lighter pigmented than I personally like. Like, they take a little more building up, but some people like that type of formula, so not knocking it. I do also think the shimmers in this, they're a little crumbly. And I just prefer something a little smoother. But other than that, like this, the looks I got out of this, I loved. This color story is out of this world. I absolutely love it. Coming in at #6, I have the Odin's Eye Silvery Bliss palette. The first time I opened this up and looked at it, my jaw was on the floor. I just think, again, this is one of the most beautiful color stories that they've ever done. It is holiday-esque, but I can also see myself using this not just during the holiday season. And that's something I think is really different and important with a holiday collection for me. It's like, yeah, I want to be able to use this not just in the holiday because it's kind of a waste of money, right? Like, you want to be able to use this anytime and feel like, yeah, I really enjoy this look. It doesn't look super Christmassy. I love the different mix of cool tones, reds. I think the quality of this is very, very good. There is one of these marbled shades that is in that large palette I was talking about. So if you don't like those marbled shades, maybe you wouldn't enjoy that. But I actually really enjoyed the looks I got out of this. I think it was such a beautiful, well done palette. We are officially in the top 5, and obviously these top 5 are just like mind-blowing. Okay, so coming in #5, I have the Unearthly Cosmetics High Temp palette. I still remember filming with this palette, using these mattes on the eyes, especially the top row, and being like, wow, these bright mattes are the best bright mattes I've ever used. They are just ultra pigmented, but they're not like sticking to the eye and you can't blend them. Like, silky soft, but very pigmented. I love warm tones, so I loved the look I got out of that top row. But I also think this is done in such a way that is smart, because now we have this lower row that has a little more of a tameness to it. It's a little more subdued. It's a little more mauvey neutral. So you are able to get a variety of looks with not a lot of shadows. I also love how matte heavy this is. There are 4 shimmers, which is for me perfect. I always use more mattes in my looks than shimmers. And I love that we have 2 standard shimmers. We have a duochrome and a multichrome. Perfect. Give me 2 special shades and I'm there. And that made the price of the palette go down significantly from their usual prices. But I'm very impressed with the quality and I love this color story. #4, I have the Cosmic Brushes Undergrowth palette. I love this palette, obviously. And I think if you wanted the Natasha Denona Yucca palette, I would tell you to get this one. I like this one so much more than the Yucca palette, and it's giving the same vibes. It's giving that like green, olive green, but also like clay terracotta neutrals as well. But I think the quality of this is better. Or let's say I prefer the quality of this. I mean, every time I created looks with this, I was just in love. And I'll be honest with you, I just love greens. I love olive greens, these like grungy, dirty greens. That's where my heart is when it comes to greens. And again, I can still create a neutral look that even leans more warm. There's nothing else to say besides it's beautiful. The top 3, you guys, it's been stressing me out. All 3 of these could easily be shifted. And in fact, I'm sitting here looking at them and really deciding which order I want them to go in because I'm still not sure. They're all kind of similar. They all kind of give the same vibes, in my opinion. They're not the same. They're not dupes for each other, but all that to say, like, they all could be number one at any given time. There's no real major distinction. There is a major distinction between these three and the Undergrowth. Like, the Undergrowth is clearly number 4. It's not making the top 3. So I hope that makes sense. I'm really unsure how to do this, but we're just gonna go with the gut, okay? Don't put too much weight in this. They're all number 1 palettes in my mind. Coming in at number 3, I am going to put the Lunar Beauty Moonshroom palette. You guys know I love Lunar Beauty. They have made my number 1 palette last year, which was the Full Fantasy palette. Incredible palette. But this, great packaging. Look at this. I just love, like, the mushrooms and the fairies and the butterflies. Oh my gosh, he does an incredible job with this packaging. It's clearly well thought out. The moon is raised. This color story, it's beautiful. It's neutral but grungy, mustardy tones, grungy greens. We even have some pops of purple in here. It's matte heavy. The formula of Lunar Beauty is great. Very user-friendly mattes. They are able to be built up to look like they are in the pan, but they're not difficult to work with. They're very blendable. They're very easy to use. Not overly pigmented like some other brands, but I think it's really, really user-friendly. Light to deep in the mattes. Their shimmers are also very beautiful, very smooth, very sparkly. He usually puts in 1 or 2 special shimmers. There is just 1 duochrome here. I fully enjoy this palette, really love it, and it was my number 1 palette up until these other 2 palettes launched after. But again, you could ask me in 2 months and this could be number 1 because I love it that much. Coming in at number 2, I have the Cosmic Brushes Neutrals palette. This could be the one palette I could keep in my collection and get so many looks out of it and fully enjoy it and fully, yeah, I mean, this palette just makes me so happy inside. It just makes me so happy inside. If you are looking for an all-encompassing neutral palette, but it's not just giving neutrals, we can definitely create a purple look out of this. We definitely can create something that leans a little more green. I've already told you about how I feel about the formulas of Cosmic Brushes. I really, really enjoy it. This one has a couple of shifting shades. We have their usual like iridescent shade. There's a multi-chrome, and this one I think is a duochrome luxe. It is, yeah, I mean, it's yummy to me. I love neutrals, but I also love having a little variety in my palettes. So for me, this was a huge win. Stunning palette. And coming in at number 1, can I get a drum roll, please? This palette is so new to me, but I can't help but put this in first place. Every time I look at it, I'm so inspired, and I've created several looks with this palette, and they all look very different, but they all look very beautiful. And I'm actually wearing it on my eyes today, and I was wearing it on my eyes in the beginning of this video. And that is the Unearthly Cosmetics Just a Taste palette. You guys, this palette is by far my favorite palette they've ever done, and it is my favorite palette I tried this year. I know it's so new to me, but I feel something when I look at this. Every time I wear this palette and look at my eye look, I'm like, wow, like my jaw's on the floor. We've got reds, which I wore my red look yesterday. I loved it. Very easy to work with. Now, I've had Unearthly palettes in the past that have had reds, like their old formula, and I had a really hard time blending out the red. No problem with this red. No problem with this red. We have warm neutrals. I can create a warm neutral look. We have slightly more cool tones. We have greens. We have purples. So I clearly did create a purple look with this today. I just love their new formula, and I love their layout of this size of palette. To me, it is big enough that it's versatile. It's not overwhelming. All of the shades go together, but you can obviously get very distinct looks. The shimmers are super shiny, super eye-catching. We have some standard shimmers, we have some duochromes, we have some multi-chromes. There's a whole mix of different textures in here, light to deep and light in the mattes and the metallics. My only complaint with this is there's no inner corner highlight for me, but I will clearly look past it. I can easily reach into another palette to get that because the quality and the color story and the theming, like a vampire, yes, give it to me. In the holidays, why not? Favorite palette I've tried this year. It's phenomenal. All right, and that is it for this palette ranking. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on anything I talked about today. I would love to know your thoughts. Please let me know what you're thinking. Do you also agree with my ranking? What's the favorite palette that you've tried this year? Let me know. I would really love to know. Thank you for an incredible 2024. I'm really thankful for all of your support. For those of you who have been here throughout the year, thank you so much. I hope you have is this going up before Christmas? I'm not sure. Probably not. I hope you had a nice Christmas if you celebrate. I hope you have a wonderful new year. I will upload some other things before the end of the year, I'm sure, but this is kind of my official end of year video, if that makes sense. But yes, thank you so much for watching. I know this is a long one, and I will talk to you soon, and I will see you in a new video soon. Bye.